Hey, leader. Welcome to Stop, Drop, and Roll, the podcast dedicated to empowering you at the intersection of work and home in leadership, with or without the title. I'm Jen Caceres, here to meet you right where you are and help you intentionally grow as you reflect, observe, listen, and evolve along your leadership journey.
Welcome to episode 5, Changing Jobs and Careers. Changing your job or career is always a topic of discussion for leaders, whether it's you or someone you're leading. Whether you're developing yourself into a new role, maybe a promotion, or it could be specifically a totally different career. Maybe you're not making enough money, or you might feel stagnant in your role. Perhaps you fell in love with something else in another industry. And whatever it is, it's still a huge change. I want to be clear about one thing. Changing careers is different from changing jobs. A lot of times you'll read something or you'll find a book and they're talking about changing careers. And we often put that into the same category as just changing a job, and they're very different. So when you seek to change a job, it involves moving to a different position, usually within the same field or industry, and it might even be within the same organization. It's typically without a significant change in skills, or maybe your overall career trajectory might stay the same. It doesn't fundamentally change the type of work you do usually. It might be something like moving from accounts payable at company X to accounts receivable. You stay in the same company, you stay in the same type of job within the business. A career change involves more significant shifting. You're really going into a new field or a new industry. And with this, you usually require new skills, typically a new mindset, or a different way of working. And this might be something like going from being a nurse to being a truck driver. So a very significant career change. Now, both of these can be driven by a desire for a lot of things. Maybe it's more meaningful work, a better work-life balance. That word is overused a lot, so I have a different word that I use. Comfort, or an alignment with personal passions and maybe just interests. As we age, as we get more experience in different fields, sometimes our desires or interests change and we go a different route. What I've found is that there are two main things that drive the desire to change your job or your career. The first one is fear. We do a lot of things or hold back from doing things out of fear. Maybe you're fearful of leaving a great job. Maybe it's leaving a paycheck. Am I financially prepared to step away for a few months or however long it takes you to find that new job? Fear of what others will think often gets in our way. If maybe it's our parents, our friends, colleagues, and they try to really sway how we're thinking about this. They do it out of love, but sometimes that fear comes into play. There can be some cultural implications around this too. How we've changed in the world from maybe 20 years ago when I was in my early stages of career. Men were always the breadwinner. And that was what was still traditional. Being raised by a baby boomer, that was a way things were. Now it's very acceptable and respectable for gender roles to change on who's bringing in more money, who's climbing the ladder, who's staying home with the kids, or if you want to have kids at all, right? So there's just a lot of cultural implications and fear that comes in based on what we've been taught, what our parents showed us, and also the noise of others and their respectful opinions. The second thing that often gets in our way is comfort. And I use comfort because I feel like balance is overused. We try to find this work-life balance. We try to balance our home, and it's just a little bit overused in my opinion. With organizations bouncing back into their old ways of having people now maybe going into a physical office, they're forcing you to commute again, or You have to physically plan your day differently. There's no more laundry between Zoom meetings. We might stay or leave a job based on this comfort. Another thing is we often get complacent, or another word is comfortable, knowing what to expect. You might know your manager really well, your teammates, you understand your 401k and the other benefits, and it's really not comfortable to have to move and learn all that over again. Humans are creatures of habit, and most of us naturally resist change. We get comfortable in our stories, and we may have great or not so great relationships with people, but either way, we've told ourselves a story about them. And some of that is true. Some of that is things that we've made up, right? That's just what we do. And we enjoy staying in that space. It's comfortable, sometimes to our demise and actually discomfort. I like to use the term comfortably uncomfortable. Some would say that it's easier to stay in a bad relationship than it is to start over. And we can use this all throughout our lives, personal and professional. There are more things that determine whether or not you're going to change your job or your career, but fear and comfort come up most as I'm coaching. And the most relevant story that I can share with you is my own leadership journey around career change and job change. So before we get into the 6 steps as we normally do, I want to share a little bit of my story just to not only help you get to know me as a person, not just a voice behind a mic on a podcast, but I'm a real life person, and these things really did and are continuing to happen to me. Back in early 2023, I was an executive in HR. I was on point, and my career trajectory was to move into a director role. I was throwing myself into my job as an executive coach, and I was working on engagement initiatives at my organization. I spent a couple of years working on these projects around employee engagement and strategic people planning, and it was absolutely my passion. And I love doing that today for other organizations. But back in 2023, early in the year, I hit this personal wall. Even though I was thriving in my quote unquote job and my career, I had something that was going on personally that I was sort of putting to the side. My comfort was very uncomfortably comfortable, if I'm being completely honest with you. Now, if you're a parent or a child of anyone who's dealt with an eating disorder, I just want to put that out there that you might want to fast forward a little bit because it could be triggering. But I'll tell you a little bit about our story. I woke up one day and I realized that my daughter was dying. And I am not trying to be overly dramatic here, and I could edit this part out, but I want to keep it real. We're going into our 6th year of the eating disorder, and I was at a real crossroads. I was a single mother climbing a career ladder, trying to make money, keep my house and everything in check. And it was a challenge for me because I was pouring myself into my job, and that became my habit. That became the way that I coped with my daughter's illness. And I hit that wall one morning when I woke up, and I said, you know what? I have to make a choice. And again, not to sound so dramatic, but it was either my kid or my job. I had been very unconsciously planning. I didn't know what I was doing in the background, or maybe it was a spiritual thing, a God thing for me, but I was okay. I had to make a choice, and I knew I was going to be okay. And I'm sharing all of this so you can get to know me as Jen, the human, but also that we go through these things unexpectedly. We're not expecting someone in our family to get sick. We're not expecting to have to switch our job or shift our career in any way, and it does happen. As we get into things here, it's also important for you, with all of those emotions that go into our job, to kind of ask ourselves this big question. And this was a question that I really had to ask myself. As you stop here in step 1, what kind of change do you need? Is it your job? Is it your entire career? Or are you upset with something or someone that's making you want to leave? There's a lot of different components, and typically it's emotion. You might be saying, at this point where you are in your job or your career or just where you are personally, it doesn't matter at this point. I don't care about any of that stuff, Jen. I just need a change. I just need to get out of what I'm doing. And I get that a lot as I'm coaching, but it does matter. We're going to work through these steps today to help you just get your bearings, clarify some things, and really start looking at this big picture to figure out how you can ultimately evolve and move into the space that suits you more. Step 1 is to stop and ask yourself that question. What kind of change do you need? Step 2 is to drop. And what I'm going to ask you to do in this moment is to drop the limitations in your mind. You may not even be aware that you have them, but today more than ever, we can honestly be and do almost anything we want to do within reason. Now, if you're super young and don't have the experience, you might need to get some of that. If you're older and you want to go back and do things, you might be challenged more, but there are so many limitless things that we can do today. However, there is a risk, but you have to, at this point, please drop the story that you're telling yourself for now. I want you to take in a nice big deep breath as we get started and think about how you're talking about yourself and to yourself as we go through these things. Step 3 is to reflect. We have a lot to do here when it comes to job change or career change. The first question I want to pose to you is, am I dissatisfied with my current role because of myself? Is it the company, the specific job that I'm doing, or is it the entire industry? We have to really look at this big picture because oftentimes we are so emotional about our work. It's where we spend most of our time. Even when you're working from your couch or your home office, you're still in that other space mentally. It's interesting. One story that I can think of is I worked with an individual who was getting ready to retire. They were on their way out of their organization, and I was evaluating the culture and the engagement in this department. I went in and I was interviewing some of the folks, and the woman that was getting ready to leave, she was very frustrated. And she said, you know what, I'm so glad that I'm leaving because they keep hiring all these young people, and these young people do things so differently. I'm here telling them how to do something, and then they're over there Googling it anyway, doing it differently. And she felt very disrespected. She had been in her role for a long time. I call those our legacy folks. They add a ton of value because they were probably there from the beginning when you went through all those growing pains as an organization. They add a ton of value, but oftentimes they will pick up on this shift as we're bringing in new talent and they are getting ready to retire. There's an emotional bind there because they take it very personally that people aren't doing things the same way or something like that. And one of the things I do in organizations is really go in and evaluate the health of that team or entire organization, that culture and engagement. Things like what this woman said are done every single day. And it's honestly mostly because leaders don't explain expectations. If she had been in an environment where She was told, listen, this is how we are going to transition you out of your legacy role. And that person, that new talent, was brought into that same place and said, this is how we're going to transition you into this role. And these are some of the expectations that we have. These are some of the things that we're going to do as a team. We're going to establish boundaries. We're going to go in and really get this culture fit and healthy so that we can have this transition. But a lot of times we don't take the time to do that. We don't think we have time and we don't think we have money. So there's a lot of unhappy people at work because people don't communicate expectations. Then we tell ourselves these stories and leadership is too busy and all this kind of stuff, and people end up leaving. And that may be something you're thinking about as you're considering, do I want to change my job? Do I want to change my career? I just bring that up because as you're reflecting, if you're struggling with the culture of your department, it might simply be something like communication. It could be a manager. I do believe that managers hold the key to happiness. They hold the key to engagement. They hold the key to communication, all of those things. Sorry, managers, leaders, you are the one on the block for this. If you are in that position where you're feeling like you need a change and it's because who you're working with, I have to say, you got to try everything before you just up and say, you know what, I'm done with this. If you've had the crucial conversation with the person that you're struggling with, an open, candid conversation with them where you can be truthful and honest. And if those things aren't an option at your organization, that's something to consider too. But you'll need to look deeply at where you could be getting in the way, because unfortunately we do that. It's hard to hear and it might be hard to reflect on this and like, where am I getting in the way? But it does happen. If you're struggling with the culture of your organization, not just the department, but the entire organization where everyone behaves a certain way, or you really do truly feel that environment is toxic everywhere you go, it could be an organizational change that you need. And what I would recommend there is some one-on-one coaching so that you can continue to reflect and look inward. On that point, where do you come into this environment as you're reflecting? This is about self-reflection. How have your personal and professional priorities changed since you took the job? How do they align with the type of job that you're looking for or looking to do now? Thinking about this, maybe you started your job or within this industry 2, 5, 10, 20 years ago, who knows? And it fit your needs then. Maybe you were single, you were just trying to gain a work foundation, but now you're ready to start a family, or you want to move, or priorities have changed. I want to plant this seed and ask you how fair you're being with your organization. They're not required to change with you, and it's not fair to blame them or be angry about your job or your company if they're not willing to change around your needs. We really have to look inward and ask, what are we asking of our organization? Because our priorities have changed. Most industries have diverse environment pockets within your company culture. And what I mean by that is that it's really different for someone out in the field, maybe typically working on their feet, or they're at their desk for many hours, doing something away from others, getting sort of that brunt of maybe customer service duties, oftentimes working solo on big things, or even in teams on things, but you feel like you're at the bottom. You might go then to another building or another site, and it's a totally different environment. They're having an offsite, they're drinking pop or beer, they're having snacks, and the culture just feels like a totally different place, but it's the same, but it's not. So what I say is that you took the job that you took at the organization. If you signed up to be a delivery driver for company A, you can't get upset at the guy or gal who's in IT looking for malware eating pizza at their desk. They got their job, they knew what they were getting, and you got yours. A moment to self-reflect here as we go through this step, looking at the entire picture. All right, another question is, what do I feel is missing in my professional life that a new career or a job might provide? So what strengths and passions drive what I want to do? What's missing? For example, purpose. How is your current job giving you higher purpose? Do you feel like you're fulfilling something bigger than just moving things from point A to point B? Another example is growth opportunity. What kinds of development and growth do you have available to you? This is super important. You do not want to wake up in 20 years and realize you never learned how to do anything other than what you've been doing for 20 years. And I know that might sound a little bit drastic, but I have coached organizations where that happens. Another example is working to your strengths. Do you get to use your strengths every day? Are things delegated to you in a way that makes sense? Now, those strengths and passions that you're listing out, those things or whatever might be missing that your current job isn't providing, it doesn't mean that you need to necessarily just go get a new job because you're not getting those things. I want you to think a little bit more clearly about yourself here and ask, what conversations have you had or do you need to have to address this? Maybe it's the purpose piece or growth or working to your strengths. Whatever examples you came up with that are not there today, what have you done to have the conversation around those? If you're waiting for your leader to do those things for you naturally, they need to know what you need. And if they don't know what you need, they can't help you, like anything else in life. Okay. You have to make the decision whether or not what is missing is the deal breaker or if it's something that you can repair. That really does begin with the communication with your leader. And as a leader of yourself, you owe it to yourself to work through those things in order to grow. Step 4 is to observe. The question I pose here is, what successful career transitions can you learn from? Maybe it's from your past. Here, it's helpful to list out all the jobs you've ever had. And it could be a very short list or an extremely long list. But I want you to think back. What specific aspects of your previous roles were most fulfilling? And what left you feeling unmotivated or unsatisfied? From that, once you have your list, what patterns do you see? What are you recognizing? Now, this is a huge task because it really requires you to reflect and observe, which is where we're at, about how are you feeling? What fulfilled you? What left you unmotivated or what was unsatisfying? A lot of times our past creeps into our present. We bring all kinds of baggage and emotion with us from every past job or relationship to every current job or career transition. It is human nature. As we sit in step 4 for a moment and we observe, I want to take you a little bit deeper. What beliefs about yourself or your career trajectory might be holding you back from pursuing new opportunities? What beliefs about yourself are holding you back? How do you feel when you look at job postings or you think about interviews? Are you excited? Are you nervous? Why? Why do you feel that way? And then lastly, are you limiting your job search to familiar roles because it just feels safer? Are you limiting yourself, again, out of that fear and comfort? And after what you've listened to so far today, whether you're leaning more towards a career change or just a crucial conversation with a manager or a teammate, you'd have to answer these questions. Lastly, step 5 is to listen. If you are considering a job or career change, Are you pursuing jobs that truly align with your passions and your strengths? Or are you chasing what you think is expected of you? Give yourself some space here to really listen to your answers. Listen to your inner dialogue. Ask yourself if you're supporting yourself or sabotaging your confidence. Especially if you've been in a role or an organization for a long time, it's easy to talk ourselves out of being good enough. This is why it is so important for you to have development plans. No matter what your role is, you should be developing. What's your gut telling you about the roles that you're considering? As you're looking at different roles or talking to people, are they exciting or do they feel like you might be compromising? So if you consider moving ahead with any kind of a change here, consider the long-term impact that each potential job might make you feel. What's the impact of each one? Are you going to feel secured, inspired, or even thinking about it right now, does it make you feel hesitant? A lot of times these thoughts and feelings come from others. While I do encourage you to listen to others, I want you to choose wisely. Many times our friends and family have these amazing intentions. They love us, they care for us, they want us to be well and do well, but they unknowingly give us advice based on their own emotions and their needs. You need someone in your court who can give unbiased support to empower you to make the right decision. You do not want someone else to make this decision for you. It will stunt your growth. Lastly, let's dive into step 6, which is evolve. You have a lot of questions to sift through today. Is it a career change or a job change? Or neither, and it's a conversation that you've been avoiding and you need to have to gain some clarity. If you are changing roles or careers, I'm going to ask you to consider a couple of things. One is, what are the skills or qualifications you might be missing that would help open up new opportunities? And what do you need to do to get started in acquiring them? The best place to look for these things is on job descriptions. If you're out looking for work and you're not sure what you need to get a job, look at those job descriptions that are out there. They're going to give you a list. And I'll share with you, even though this is not the job search episode, which will come in the future, a job description is a wish list, my friends. You do not need to have everything or be able to do it all in order to get the job. So use those, though, in order to find out what you might need or what they're looking for as you move into a new industry or a new role. In regard to your personal and professional growth, what work do you need to do on things like confidence, communication, or problem solving? The clarity around those things will ensure that you're growing and evolving. Remember, it's important to have that clarity because when we're unclear on what we want or what we should have or how our past experience influences our present, we tend to become paralyzed. And then we stay and we're unhappy. And what we say is we quit and stay, right? Rather than quit and leave a job. The questions that I pose to you today are meant to encourage you. I want you to dig deep into your motivations. Look closely at your patterns from the lists that you've made and really listen to that inner voice to help you live that healthy, happy life.
I hope you're feeling inspired and encouraged as you reflect, observe, listen, and evolve through whatever you need to today. Remember, true leadership starts within. For more resources, visit perpetualcapacity.com. Until next time, keep growing and leading on this journey we call life.